Welcome back to Kings of Columbus on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Sunday sound off on Ohio State's 13-10 loss to the Michigan Wolverines. Landis, you were there. I was not. But we have many things to talk about, led by a survey from our tech subscribers and 700 plus responses from our tech subscribers. Was there a theme to what people shared?
I mean, it was all conversation about Ryan Day stay or go and split, certainly. I actually I was expecting to go through, and again, there were 700 plus that came in after the game. I wasn't able to go through all of them. There was not a lot of just sort of F this with nothing else. People were pretty thoughtful, I think, about how they were feeling, whether they were feeling good or bad about kind of the current state of things in the future. So I very much appreciated that. But yeah, it was just which camp are you in? That keep giving Ryan Day more chances, or we're done here?
Yeah. So do we want to go right to Ryan Day, or do we want to have more of a game-centric conversation that will lead us to a discussion about the future of the program?
I guess we can run through the game a little bit, right? It does seem like people's minds are mostly on what's up with Day, but I think if we talk about the game a little bit, we can get in to some of that. And we got some questions that I have put into categories of either I guess mostly against Ryan Day right now, that have some game centric stuff in there. If we want to kind of use that to kick it off.
Yeah.
I think we can do that.
There's some points. I think particularly because I think a lot of people, and I think we are among them, feel like the offensive game plan from Ryan Day and Chip Kelly was not what it should have been, especially in particular circumstances. And that certainly is a large part of the conversation about the future of Ryan Day. So I did go back and rewatch the whole thing. Can I start with the first drive with something first before we get into
let's do it,
some texture stuff? So again, this is and just so people know, you and I shared some of these thoughts on late night KOTN late night on Saturday night, but so a little bit of it is repeat, but we know not everyone watching and listening here watched that. If you watch the first drive, if you watch the first 6 plays of the first drive, I think you would believe Ohio State won this game 31-10.
Yeah.
Because they came out and threw the ball right down the field. They threw on 5 of their first 6 plays. They gained 9 yards, 8 yards. They ran for nothing, 8, 13, and then a pass interference call to Jeremiah Smith, where they threw a one-on-one ball in the end zone, which was the exact right call there. And it got them to the 16-yard line. And this was like the beginning of things getting away from them. And I just got another tweet about it. And we do need to restate it for the case. We know the facts are that the team that wins the rushing battle has won the last 23 Ohio State-Michigan games. But the idea that means Ohio State must run the ball to win, or that Ohio State should be willing to turn the game into a battle of what Michigan does best against what Ohio State doesn't do best is crazy to us, right? I'm not speaking out of turn there. That the whole idea is to change the tenor of this rivalry by making it on Ohio State's terms rather than giving into something. Who cares that Ohio State won that way with Beanie Wells, or won that way with JT Barrett, or won that way with Terrell Pryor? That's not what this team is and where it is right now. It very much is where Michigan is. And so to throw that stat out as proof of Ohio State must run it, there's 2 questions there then. So do you think they should build this team to be a run-first team as a program overall? Or do you think that when they are not that, they should do the thing they aren't the best at in the most important game of the year, regardless of where their advantage is? And I can't imagine that the answer to either of those is what people really want.
Well, I mean, if you would rather Ohio State be a run first team, I don't think that's wrong, right? They're not built that way. I thought they would be built that way coming into this year. My estimation of that was wrong, and then it was compounded by some offensive line stuff. But they have not become the rushing team that I thought they would be this year. I certainly don't think that that's a wrong way to build a team if that's how you would like to build your team. but that is not how this team has been built under Ryan Day. So I think the far more pertinent question is, should Ohio State be trying to play that kind of game with the way that it's built? And I think the answer to that is pretty obviously no. But Ryan Day seems fixated on it in this game, and they threw it more than they ran it, and I'm sure that's the case in all these games. But the talking points afterward, I think, have been pretty similar, which is like, we have to run the ball to win the game, and we didn't run the ball well enough. Like, you don't have to put yourself in that situation, but Ohio State seems kind of hell bent on doing so in this game, if only to kind of prove a point against Michigan.
So they throw the ball down the field, 5 of 6 throws. They get to the 16-yard line. Then they run the ball. TJ Guy beats Josh Fryer and gets the stop. It's an offensive lineman getting beat by not even one of their best 2 defensive ends, but that's a run of nothing. Then they run again on 2nd and 10, and Tegra Shabola and Austin Sareveld are supposed to get to the second level, and there are 2 linebackers to block, and they go to the same linebacker, and they block the same guy, and the other linebacker goes unblocked. Meanwhile, Bennett Christian comes across the formation and tries to cut block the edge defender and does not do it. And that edge defender and the unblocked linebacker make a tackle on Trevion Henderson. He gets 5 yards, but if there was maybe something more there were 2 mistakes in the blocking game. And again, here we are in a situation based on where the linebackers were. I'm not sure. Shabola went to the linebacker on his side, and Sareveld went diagonal and went to the linebacker on Shabola's side. I don't know that means for sure Sareveld did the wrong thing, but you're in the red zone at 2nd and 10, and you are deciding on that play, what's this play about? And you're deciding this play is about Bennett Christian, Austin Sareveld, and Tegra Shabola. Is the decision you are making in the red zone. And that, to me, given the circumstances, and Ryan Day was talking about it after the game, the offensive line injuries, he said he thought that showed up today. Why are you letting it show up? You have 11 players on the field on that play. No offense to those guys. I would argue those are your 3 worst players on the field, because they're not Emeka Egbuka. They're not Will Howard. Again, this is not it's just the reality of what the situation is. You have to be a very good football player to play for Ohio State in the Michigan game, of course. So why are you doing that on 2nd and 10? Why is that the call? And it got 5, but it wasn't enough when you could have thrown the ball to Emeka Egbuka, or you could have rolled the pocket and thrown the ball to Jeremiah Smith, or get Will Howard on the edge and do something. Why is that the call after you threw the ball down the field?
Yeah, I know, it's a good question. Actually, like, Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts actually asked Ryan Day a really good question after the game, because I don't know that Ohio, like, maybe with the exception of the touchdown that it scored, like the other times it got into the red zone, if it tried to throw the ball into the end zone, it did on the pass interference penalties, but those were like 25 yards and out, because it didn't result in Ohio State getting the ball on the 2-yard line. So, I don't have the answer. I don't know. It's not like Ohio State, it's its opening drive. Ohio State doesn't script plays. Ryan Day says that all the time. So it's not like that. Those were just the next play in the sequence that they had hoped to run to start the game. So if that's just like, we got down here with the thing we do best, and now we're going to finish it by proving we can do this other thing too, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm psychoanalyzing the play call there a little too much. But, 5 yards is a successful run play. So I don't know if it's worth criticizing all that much, but I think it's more about the disposition, I guess, to just want to get down there and start running the ball.
Because now you're also getting into, now you're in a run pass thing, which is that's just what bad teams do. That's what Michigan did all day, like run pass. We only pass if we have to. So now you get into a 3rd and 5, and I thought there were 4 key throws in the game where Will Howard, it felt like the way the play unfolded, determined before the snap where he was going with the ball. And I thought this 3rd down was the first one. He locks onto Emeka Egbuka, who on his inside break gets grabbed by Makari Page. And it holds Emeka up, and then Will Howard leads him as if he's not going to be held up, and the ball is out of his reach and it's incomplete. And if Will Howard waits, and I think he had the protection to wait and get to a second read, I thought he had a couple guys coming open as the second or third read. Carnell Tate and G. Scott on the opposite side had in-breaking routes that I thought were going to be open, but I think he decided, it felt like, maybe he didn't, but it's what it felt like, because it wasn't really open. They just threw it anyway, and it was incomplete, and then they settle for a field goal, and like they don't go for it there. So then it's almost like, so I don't, right, by any metric, 2nd and 10, a 5-yard run is successful. But now you're in a do or die throw, and I think you should throw there, but you're not close enough to really have a run option, because you're not going to run it unless you're going to go for it on 4th down. So it's actually like the first down run play where Josh Fryer gets beat, sets in motion a circumstance where now you're throwing it on 3rd down. I thought both interceptions read like Will Howard decided, especially the first one, decided definitely before the snap where he was going. And again, if you look at the interception when he threw to Carnell Tate, there are 2 in-breaking routes that are coming open if he comes off the first read where the corner is just sitting on it. And I know he said post-game, like, he should have thrown it outside instead of inside. It was not there. There was no part of that was there ever. I don't think there was a throw that could have been made there that would have been successful. Do you?
No. The corner was playing off. He had his eyes on Will Howard the entire time. Like, it was never open, in my opinion.
So this is one, at least, like, Jaden Fielding actually made this field goal, but I thought, like, this was the beginning of it, of you throw, and we get it. It's the red zone and the field shortens and the back, the end zone is the 12th defender, and lots of teams don't throw it as much down there. But this has been the most effective red zone team in the country. And so that to me was like an inkling of what was to come, which was, you're going to let the key moments in this game be determined by disadvantageous matchups for Ohio State. And also, Will Howard in key moments was not good. And that this is a veteran quarterback who's played pretty well all year, played well in big games, just locked on guys is dumbfounding. And so the first drive sort of had the whole game within it, I thought, Bill.
Yeah, I thought Howard seemed a little sped up at times. Like, he had been pretty good under pressure, and I think had gotten, like, significantly better under pressure throughout the course of the year. He was actually quite bad early on in the year, but then, like, from the Oregon game on, he was pretty good. Not a good grade under pressure in this game against Michigan. He was pressured a lot, almost half his dropbacks. 6 of 16 for 74 yards in the interception, but even when he wasn't sacked, but it did seem like even the ball from the end, like the Carnell Tate interception, he's in his own end zone. Like, I don't even think it was a thought that he would get to any other read other than whatever the first one was there, because of where they were on the field, right? So,
yep.
He just pressed. He pressed. Like, it's not, he pressed and played his worst game. And I don't know. I know there's some people who thought, like, he wasn't the same guy after he came back out from the injury tent, but I thought even before that he didn't look 100% locked in. And then he looked good on the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half, so it's not like it was all bad. But I did feel like this was probably the most I've seen him affected by pressure, or even the thought that he might get pressured.
So then I think the other drive I just want to talk about specifically is after the Jack Sawyer interception, when they got the ball and it was like, okay, here they go. So they run on first down. Trayvon Henderson bounces it outside, I think gets 5. And then I thought these 2 pass plays were exactly what you were talking about, with Will Howard getting sped up. The second down play, he had Emeka Egbuka in the middle of the field and didn't take it. And I thought maybe even had Carnell Tate, and instead he kind of rolled out, and then Tate, whose route initially was in breaking, then went outside with him, and then Will Howard put the ball on Carnell Tate's hands and he dropped it. So it wasn't a perfect throw, but it was a catchable throw. But the point was, I thought he had open guys and got happy feet with pressure that wasn't really there and left the pocket. And then the third down throw, Joel Klatt, it was hard. They only showed it the play live. They didn't replay it. And Joel Klatt said he thought the coverage was good. I thought he had Emeka Egbuka outside on his first read. It was in between zone coverage, but I thought it was there. and then he didn't take it, and then tried to scramble, right, for 5 yards, and it was never there. It was never going to be there. And he did his best. He
The
got
scramble,
4.
on that scramble, wasn't it? It was after the pick. It was 3rd and 9, and he scrambled for 8 yards.
It was
He
3rd
was,
and
like, just
9? Okay.
yeah, and
Okay.
he ran for 8 yards. He was, like, just short of the 6, yeah.
But I didn't think I didn't think it was there enough that he was ever going to get it. I didn't think the scramble was the right call there. Did you
He got
did you
more
think
than
that
I
was a good call?
no, but then he ended up getting more than I thought he was gonna get. Like, I thought once he started trying to run, I was like, "Oh, this play's dead," and then he nearly got the first down.
No,
So
hold on a second. No, that's not the one I'm talking about. The 3rd and 8 was after the field goal. No, it was 3rd and 5. It was 3rd and 5 after the pick, and he got 4. It was 3rd and 5 after the pick, and he got 4. So it wasn't like a gigantic long scramble.
oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, I had my drives mixed up.
So, but I thought he had 2 shots there to take something that was there, and I think he got it. I think he got in his own head a little bit with. He locked on some first reads, and then later, as a result, he didn't take first reads that were there, and then this becomes a discussion. And here's the part of this that, and we'll get off the specifics here because people want big picture, I think, but. With that quarterback performance, and we have to have a special teams conversation, and that special teams performance, if Corey Dennis and Parker Fleming were the assistant coaches in charge of those 2 areas today, I'd be leading the march on Ohio Stadium to get them fired, except they're gone.
Yeah.
And in the biggest game of the year, the quarterback made mistakes that a veteran quarterback can't afford to make in a game like that. And the kicker missed 2 field goals, and also they had 2 devastating return mistakes that we'll get to in a second. Devastating.
Yeah.
That absolutely changed field position in such a fundamental way. One on a punt and one on a kick from 2 of their star players, that if it was like, hey, Parker Fleming, how come you aren't coaching these guys to, like, figure out where the ball's going to land in the wind? And here we are. Those guys are gone, and they made critical mistakes at quarterback and on special teams.
Yeah, I mean, that was all of it was surprising because we discussed during the week how well Will Howard had played in big games. I certainly expected that to continue, and I guess like some of the special team stuff, especially with Travion Henderson returning kicks, like he's kind of made poor decisions every time he's been back there. The Caleb Downs punt return was surprising, but then the whole entire special teams operation just like kind of reverted back to what it was the previous 2-3 years, right? It had been building some momentum in a way that was really exciting, and then it got to the Michigan game, and they couldn't even do the basic stuff right, and then didn't really have anything layered on top of that to make up for it.
So let's just do it here real quick. The kicker looked nervous, right? Didn't he kick nervous? You missed a 34-yarder and a 38-yarder. And it didn't feel like the snap or the hold were off, right? That's just nerves.
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose like I guess I don't know any other way you'd spin it. It is funny to me that Ryan Day in his post-game press conference said that part of the reason they didn't throw the ball more is because of the wind, but they were perfectly fine kicking field goals.
Yeah.
Like doesn't make any sense.
But also Dominic Zavada was perfectly fine drilling 55-yarders.
Yeah, no, it's a BS excuse that I don't agree with. Like,
Yeah.
I don't agree with the principle of it, but it's just like, don't say that in a game where you kick 3 field goals and miss 2 of them.
Right. So I think it's the coaching responsibility to like help your kicker not be nervous when it really matters. Like, what else are you practicing all year? Right. It's like, okay, we get it. You can hit 48-yarders in perfect circumstances. So let's work on don't be nervous in the game. That's the other thing we're working on. Don't be nervous. Put yourself in a situation to be at your best. That's coaching. So the kicker's got to be better, but they've got to put him in a situation mentally and emotionally to be better. And then the other thing is they lost 37 yards of field position on a 68-yard punt versus a 31-yard punt that gave Michigan a short field to kick a field goal because I guess it was windy for that, but like Caleb Downs kind of let the ball hit at the 20 and rolled to the 7.
Mm-hmm.
And if he just is able to get under that and catch it, it saves 13 yards of field position. And it's a spot where I get it. I don't know what the wind did to that ball, whatever, and it was kind of a line drive, but you've got to catch that. You've got to be able to make sure that doesn't roll an extra 13 yards, right? Is that just an okay thing to say that can't happen?
It absolutely can't happen. It was a crucial play because that happened, and then that was when Ohio State had the punt from its own end zone. Is that right? Yeah,
Yep.
and they don't have a punter that can punt the ball more than 40 yards.
And clearly the wind was against them at that point, right? So Michigan was punting with the wind and Ohio State was punting against the wind. I get that, but still a 31-yard field position switch is too much, regardless of, maybe you lose 12 yards because of the wind, not 31.
No, it was bad. We were talking about it in the press box at the moment, like we couldn't believe that Caleb Downs misjudged that ball, and then you got the worst bounce possible, and it rolled all the way practically back to your own 5-yard line, right? So those are like, hidden yardage, like although it was right there apparent for everybody to see, but it's just like doesn't really show up in the box score, I guess, if you're just looking at it that way. Bad. It's bad special teams play. There's no other way to spin it.
And so then the other one is I actually like there were kind of shadows on the broadcast. Did the kick return that they wound up at the 6-yard line, did it hit Henderson and bounce off of him and then he had to go pick it up, or did it just hit short and he had to go run and grab it?
Yeah, it hit short and then like had backspin on it. So I don't know why he let it bounce in the first place. But then when it bounced away from him. It bounced to him. Yeah.
So here's the thing that happened then. So that drive, if you just do a normal thing there, which is fair catch it and get at the 25-yard line, they lost 19 yards of field position on that drive. And then they drove the ball and wound up punting it from the Michigan 38-yard line, right? If you just start normally and have the same drive, that drive stalls at the 19, and now you're in field goal range. So, okay, now we're back to, well, is your field goal kicker going to make it? But they ended up having a pretty successful drive that still wasn't long enough to get points because they started at their own 6. So that's a scoring opportunity lost by the special teams. And so, I certainly, myself and other people, made a lot of hay out of the special teams failures of the Parker Fleming era. This game was littered with special teams failures by Ohio State when Ryan Day is very fundamentally involved in special teams.
Yeah, and he talked a lot about like their preparation coming into the game and how I felt really good about it. Like that would include special teams. I think that he has his hands on even more now. And it just, it wasn't any good. They're overthinking it. They're switching kick returners, right? Like Travion Henderson was back there. Emeka Ibuka was back there at times. They put Travion back there because they think Travion has an opportunity to return one for a touchdown. Now that they've gotten the punt return touchdown, I think like Ryan Day would very much like to get a kick return touchdown. I don't think that's the way that you approach special teams, and especially kickoff with the way the rules have changed. And Travion's just not good back there. Like he doesn't have good awareness when he's back there returning kicks. He tries to return stuff he shouldn't return. He lets the ball bounce. He runs stuff out of the end zone when he shouldn't. Like it's just not a good situation.
Yeah. So a lot of hidden yards in there. And then again, like you go to the PFF grades, the offensive line PFF grades are
they're bad.
Terrible. So,
worst of the year. Yeah.
And I think you can just go back and see there's just plays where Tiger Shabola and Carson Hinsman they are getting smoked off the snap by Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, just losing those. I'm not the offensive line guy, but there's just a lot of that multiple times where there's that initial engagement from the defensive tackle and the offensive lineman, and that initial and then it just winds up being engage and throw the lineman to the side.
Yeah.
And it just looks so easy when it's done well, and then it's a clear path to the quarterback. And it's I guess you can be upset about the development of the interior offensive line, acknowledging that there's 2 injuries that certainly affected that. You have 2 guys in there that wouldn't be in your top 5, but you also have another guy in there who is in your top 5, and that right guard spot has been iffy the entire year. And but you too often let Michigan dictate those matchups, and you never won a single one of them. I don't know that they blocked when they needed it. I'm not sure they blocked Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham all day.
Yeah, I don't know. There was that one run that went for 17 yards when Michigan came out with 2 high safeties and Ohio State had a favorable box to run into. I don't recall which defensive linemen were on the field for that play. That was Ohio State's longest run of the game. This was the second worst pass blocking grade of the year, according to PFF. Only the Nebraska game where Zem Mahalski played at left tackle was worse, and it was the worst run blocking game of the year behind the Oregon game.
Should we do? I was like, hey, let's get big picture. But actually, I have 19 specific things I would like to bring up.
Yeah.
The clock management at the end was horrible. And it was pointed out to me. I thought it was bad before the 2-minute warning. They let it tick down from like 2:36 to the 2-minute warning before they called the timeout. And if they had called their first timeout, they could have called the timeout at 2:33. And then Michigan ran it on the next play. They could have called a second timeout at 2:28 and had it then be a 3rd and 2. And then the 3rd and 2 was when they got discombobulated and had the penalty, right? And that created a first down. But if they had called the timeouts before the 2-minute warning and they weren't panicked and discombobulated, they would have had a chance to set that up to get the ball back like before the 2-minute warning.
Yeah.
And instead they waited and let 33 or 35 seconds tick off and then start calling them, which was a mistake that was then amplified by the fact that they gave Michigan a first down because they had 12 guys on the field on 3rd down.
Yeah, I don't know why. This is the first time Ryan Day's done that, right? It seems like I get if you feel like you're going to have a length of the field drive to try to go win the game, you'd like to have a timeout in your pocket, but also like you still get a stop clock when you get your first downs, right? And it feels like in those situations, Ryan Day operates like it's going to be a running clock when they're on offense. So he like tries to preserve his timeouts for whatever reason. Like I don't know. I'm always in favor of calling them kind of early and giving yourself as much time as possible. And then if you can't get the stop to benefit the time you save, well, then you were going to lose the game anyway. So, I don't know. It was odd. It's just like, I don't know. We're back to like lack of urgency and lack of awareness with Ryan Day when it comes to managing a game, like from time management and to like not understanding who's supposed to be on the field and how many guys are on the field. And then I guess it wouldn't have mattered either way, but like he tried to call a timeout, he wasn't allowed to call when they had the illegal substitution penalty. So there's a lot there to chew on.
So, and this one of those, again, if this was a year ago, I certainly would be shouting. And that's why Ryan Day has to give up play calling so he can be in charge of these situations. And he gave up play calling as in charge of these situations, and they screwed it up. So there's a lot of things. Like that's the part of this as we expanded the big thing. Like there's nothing left to do.
Right.
They got rid of the 2 weakest links on the coaching staff. They brought in a play caller so Ryan Day could be freed up to be a CEO and a culture coach and a guy who has his arms around every aspect of the program during the weekend on game day. And they had their worst performance in the last 4 years in the game. And all the other things, like that's what this was about. All these things they did was to perform at their best in this game. And every change they made, I thought was necessary and made sense. And the result was they played their worst. And so, like, what else is there to do? Like, I like to be like, you know what? Now he's really got to get rid of Justin Fry. That's gonna solve it. It's like we're past that. Like I thought there were many conversations to be had along those lines a year ago, and now I think there are none.
Yeah, I'm there too, and I think some people who were, not everyone, but some, maybe a decent amount of people who were like kind of holding strong to their stance that Ryan Day is the right guy to lead this forward were kind of pushed off that stance because of that reality. Like what else is there left to question?
So let's do that. Is there anything else before we do this that you want to touch on more specifically? Or that our texters want to touch on more specifically?
Yeah, I guess like just a couple more things about sort of like the game plan itself. Dylan sent in a text that said this was a total failure by Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. I can't believe the entire offensive game plan focused on attacking the one positional advantage that Michigan had over Ohio State. I saw Day's answer in the post game blaming the weather, but that feels like BS. And to that point, Doug and I were talking about this before we started recording. You can look on PFF, like rushing direction, runs between the tackles, basically. It's like through the guards in the center. 14 for 34 yards, and one of those was, I think it was a 17 run or an 18-yard run by Quinshon Judkins, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So then you're talking about 13 other carries for like 17 yards. And like they just kept running at Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and Rayshon Benny when he was in there. And the linebackers, Ernest Hausman, Jayshon Barham, and they just got nothing. Like there was nothing there the entire game. And they just kept running into the teeth of Michigan's defense, which, as Dylan said, was like the spot you wanted to avoid. Like literally the only spot you if you could avoid that group of players taking over the game the way that they took over the game, then there are a number of different paths for Ohio State to attack Michigan's defense. But they were a bit stubborn, in my opinion, like trying to run inside.
And then it just winds up being wasted plays, so that when you do that on first down or second down and it doesn't work, and now you go back to throwing. Now, if you're a little bit off or you get a little bit of pressure or Howard locks on a guy and you make one mistake in the pass game, now you're out of luck because you wasted a run play that really had very little chance of working anyway. Whereas if you would have thrown both times, it's like, all right, maybe we were incomplete the first time and now we'll take another shot and maybe we can, you know what I mean? It was just, and again, this goes back to the people who are like, see, you need to run. It's like, is there anybody that would watch that game and be like, they needed to try to run more? What is or if you're fundamentally, it's back to the first thing we asked, if you're fundamentally saying they need to reshape the offensive identity of Ohio State, okay, I guess, but also then we know what that means.
Yeah.
You're not reshaping it under this guy. And then also, this goes back to the conversation that is a conversation that we've been having for 5 years, which is you kind of want to be maybe one kind of team to beat Michigan, but then another kind of team to take it into the playoff. And as you have two equally important goals, which is beat Michigan and win the national title, you want to take like a running quarterback, pound it, JT Barrett offense on a national title chase. Like you don't want to have the best receiver recruiting in the nation and try to get NFL quarterbacks and like that. You're giving up on that. I mean,
what's it gotten them? They have been that.
So you would do that? Are you in favor of that? Like, are you in favor of a shift back to Ohio State, let's not try to play this brand of offense anymore because CJ Stroud and Justin Fields and Marvin Harrison and Garrett Wilson and Jeremiah Smith didn't get you where you wanted to go?
I don't know. Like, am I in favor of, I like Jeremiah Smith. I'd like to have Jeremiah Smith on my team. Yeah. So, I guess I'm like a little bit in the middle. I guess I would push back on the notion that like you can't be that kind of physical run first team and win a national title because we just saw Michigan do it. And even Georgia, which was probably led by its defense for at least one of those national titles, offensive line driven program on that side of the ball, a level of physicality. They run it pretty well and have, I think, for the most part under Kirby. And we saw like the ultimate national championship matchup of run first and throw first last year, and what won. You know, like so I guess, and there's like a game control conversation there. Like it's not running the ball that way and being almost service academy like in your efficiency and just like controlling it and really shortening the game, I think is an effective winning strategy, especially when you have really good players. And I think it's pretty clear that Ohio State wanted to be that this year, and they just didn't have the personnel for it, which I think is almost 100% an offensive line conversation. But it's also about Ryan Day, and I guess like it's like Chip Kelly can draw up a run game, right? So but like is Ryan Day actually, you know, capable of building a team that can do that? I don't know.
So I guess I at this point I would not disagree with that, but everybody just has to be prepared. If you do that tomorrow and Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin transfer and Brian Hartline stops getting his pick of the 5-star receivers, because part of the appeal is this is an offense that's going to throw the ball. and set quarterbacks and receivers up to succeed and get ready for the NFL while also competing at a very, very high level, you have to anticipate like that's going to change. So then you can't be mad about the receiver recruiting, and you can't, if you change your identity and you lean offensive line, but then you've got to nail it on the offensive line. You can't stop. I mean, you've got to win 5-star tackles and you've got to develop depth there. And okay, but also, you know, they got over the top in 14, but I've also been around for a lot of run first Ohio State teams that frustrated a lot of people because they didn't throw the ball better and also didn't get over the top. So right, if you win, nobody cares how you win. If you don't win, then people think, is this the right way to go about it? But I don't think you can turn yourself into a run first program and keep the Jeremiah Smiths of the world. I'm not saying he would transfer for sure, but I don't think you could be mad.
You can throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith 10 times a game if you're a run first team. Like I don't think that's true. Will you get the best receivers in high school recruiting year after year after year if you're not throwing the ball 40 times a game? Maybe not. But also, like, Ohio State's throw volume is not like air raid level, right? It's not.
But I mean, Georgia and Michigan don't have Jeremiah Smith, for instance. That's all I'm saying. Like, if you like, they've had winning programs, but they haven't had receiver skill guys like that who are dominant first round picks. So I agree with you. It's not all or nothing, but
which Nick Saban got Amari Cooper, right? Like Nick Saban got really good receivers without being a program that throws the ball 50 times a game.
But there was a long time where like Bama was winning without quarterback play and without receiver play, right? And then like 2020, like then they had those 4 guys and they kind of maxed that out because they started throwing it more. I'm just saying you're not going to get the same level. You're not going to be the number one home for 5-star quarterbacks and receivers if you have a pretty substantial fundamental shift in your offensive philosophy. I'm not saying that's not a reason to not do it, but you just have to. It would just be a little bit different, which is. And it's not like Ohio State didn't have good receivers before, but they didn't have this run. But also, to your point, what is this run of great receivers and quarterbacks gotten them? So,
yeah,
you just have to decide what your priorities are. So, I mean, and that's probably a conversation, maybe not for today, but do people want a change in the Ohio State offensive philosophy and priorities? Would you advocate for that? Would you say yes? It doesn't mean all or nothing. It doesn't mean if they emphasize throwing the ball right now, it doesn't mean you can't have Trayvon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. And it doesn't mean you can't have Jeremiah Smith, but it's going to be a different philosophy and a different set of priorities. Do you want to shift?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like personal preference style of football that I like to watch, I'd rather watch a team that runs the ball, but that's not really what the conversation is. I don't know. I don't know that it necessarily has to be an offensive philosophical shift. Maybe they just need to be better about recruiting and developing offensive linemen.
But I do think maybe, well, I don't know. I mean, if you tell offensive linemen we're going to pound the ball and you're going to be the key to our success, doesn't that make it easier to recruit too? I mean, like guys go to Wisconsin because they know they're going to get. Everybody wants to run block and run people over. Yeah. Right. So it's like, why aren't they getting those guys? Well, maybe it's because of part of their offense. Oh, God, I got to pass protect against
it 45 times. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. If you ask an Ohio State fan right now, you can either have a 5-star left tackle or a 5-star receiver, but you only get one. And it's also an NIL conversation. Where are you spending your money? What would you rather have? You want a receiver or a tackle? And like the answer can't be, well, we already have 5 receivers, so I'll take a tackle. No, this is like almost like starting from scratch. What would you rather have? So it's just the kind of thing you have to think about. And we know where they are and where they've been. And like, it's one of these things right now. They had 2 injuries on the offensive line, and it was like, okay, well, I guess that's it. If they had 2 injuries at receiver, right? And it'd be like, well, I guess they're playing Brandon Innes more. And it's like, well, it feels like Bryson Rodgers has flashed in his opportunities. They're playing him now. It's like they would have been, I think, better off, right? They were more prepared if they would have had injuries at receiver compared to the offensive line because they had better depth at receiver. But they had the injuries at the spot where they couldn't afford it. But what if that was reversed? You know, I remember talking to Luke Fickell in the offseason. I was asking him about offensive line injuries last year at Wisconsin. He's like, actually, I thought we handled our offensive line injuries pretty well. We had a couple skill guys get hurt, and we didn't have anybody else. It's like, okay. And I'm not saying the choice is Ohio State can either be this or be Wisconsin, but I'm just saying it's priorities. That's all. Which is, we could do 9 hours on that.
I don't know. I actually don't know what there was anger expressed at how insistent Ohio State was on running the ball. There wasn't like if you're going to do that, change the roster that I saw. But I don't know how the fan base feels with that. I'd be interested to hear it.
But now we are back to, this is the thing, and really I think what probably every Ohio State fan agrees on, which is what you just said, is that they have an offensive philosophy that they follow in talent acquisition, and then they get to the most important game of the year, and they're like, nah, let's do the other thing that we're actually not built to do, that they're built to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they're committed 364 days of the year to the thing they actually are, and then on the last Saturday in November, they're like, let's try to out-tough these guys. And now we're back to the toughness conversation, which is year 4 of that not working for Ohio State.
Yeah, I do think like there's probably some component of it too that's like, if you're playing in the North and you're playing in the Big Ten, you have to have a run game you can fall back on, because sometimes the weather will just force you into that. And I'm not saying that's what happened again in this game, because I think the wind conversation is a hollow explanation for why they didn't throw the ball more. But like, think about like the Northwestern game a couple of years ago, where like you literally couldn't throw the ball, and then Ohio State couldn't do anything because it was a bad rushing team. So that's part of my thought process too. It's like, if you're going to be in this league, in this part of the country, you better be able to run the ball if you have to. And there, I don't know that Ohio State's able to. But it also apparently can't run the ball just merely when it wants to either, against teams like this.
But then the result of that is Ohio State had what a lot of people seem to think was the best running back tandem in the country this year. And they brought in a play caller whose calling card was innovation in the run game. So they had play caller and backs. It was like, okay, they got what they need. And then it's like, is the offensive line good enough? And they had 2 injuries there. So what would... So as much as I don't think that you would have said they changed their offensive philosophy, but they did try to beef up the other part of the offense, I think, to address what you just said. And then their backs ran it 22 times for 67 yards in the biggest game of the year. So
they
is
also
this
brought
like
in a running quarterback and then like didn't run him.
And then didn't run him. Yeah, I was surprised by that, looking at that I didn't realize how little he ran until after the game, but only 4 carries. And that was, maybe was it like 2 scrambles and 2,
I think it was 2 scrambles and 2. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that was either. So then so I do think it is not an excuse, because offensive line injuries are part of the deal. But is that it then? Like, did they have what they needed otherwise? Are Judkins, Henderson, Chip Kelly, and Will Howard as a running quarterback? Is that what you want to be able to run the ball in November against Michigan? And then really the place where they were short was the offensive line. And now it's an offensive line conversation / an offensive line injury conversation.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I think they were fairly balanced between like zone and gap schemes in this game. I don't know that I felt like it was the most creative Chip Kelly has been with the run game. There have been other times this year where he's like really sprinkled in some different stuff or dressed some stuff up differently, and maybe it's just another thing that the offensive line injuries have an impact on, that he didn't seem to do that a whole lot in this game. I don't even know if it would have made a difference, because they couldn't block Michigan's guys. So yeah, it's again, it's primarily, I guess it's primarily an offensive line conversation. I think it does invite some discussion about like the strength and conditioning program and whether or not they're getting offensive linemen to the point they need to be to play in a game like this. But it's probably more about technique and recruiting and that kind of stuff than it is. I don't know. Maybe it's all encompassing, but the offensive line is clearly the missing component in there, because otherwise, yeah, I think coordinator, quarterback, running backs, I don't know what else you could ask for if you're trying to orchestrate a compelling rushing attack.
Because if you said for the starting 5 that their plan for the year, right? The way they played, how many of the starting 5 offensive linemen would you say that is the level that Ohio State should be at to get where they need to go? How many of those guys met that standard? This is a national championship caliber line for the way Ohio State wants to play. Josh Simmons, yes or no?
Yeah, I think he was on that path. Yeah.
Yeah. Donovan Jackson as a guard, yes or no?
Yeah, probably.
Seth McLaughlin, yes or no?
Yes.
Tegra Shabola / Austin Saraveld at right guard, yes or no?
No.
Josh Fryer at right tackle, yes or no?
Probably not. Probably like a shade short of that. Yeah.
I would say if he is your 5th best offensive lineman, then you probably can get away with it, which again goes back to the Chase Ferris, Darrell Baldwin conversation of 14 and 15. But he was needed to be better than that, given the other thing. So then the thing we'll say about that is that's 3 out of 5, and 2 of those are transfers. And only one's like an internal recruit and develop guy. In a year when you brought back a bunch of guys who could have gone to the NFL to win the national championship, you only had one developed offensive lineman who was ready to play at the level that Ohio State needs to win a national championship. So, which again, portal world, we get it. But if Ohio State, I still don't think Ohio State should be or can be, or there's any rationale to be like, we better grab a starter or two on the offensive line in the portal or we're screwed. I don't think the portal makes that okay. Or am I wrong? Is that just the way it is now?
No, I don't think it makes it okay. The portal doesn't exist to excuse away lapses in development.
Yeah. Okay. So then they developed for this season, they developed one championship quality offensive lineman internally in the program. So, and that showed up, right? That showed up.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We promised big picture. Do you think Ohio State needs to win the national title to save Ryan Day's job? This is a survey question to our tech subscribers. These are the answers that I gave them. No, if Ohio State looks good and competitive in the playoff, a semifinal or title game appearance would warrant a return. So, like, you can't go out and lose your first game, but like, listen, it's hard to win. And if you look good and stuff happens, you don't have to win it all.
Yeah.
No, I might fire him even if Ohio State wins the national title. So that's like the opposite no. Like, I don't even know if this is a question anymore. Or yes, it's natty or bust for Ryan Day right now. So there's 1 yes and 2 no's. What do you think won?
Yes.
What percentage do you think it got?
40.
57% yes, it's natty or bust for Ryan Day's job. 25% no, if they're competitive, it would warrant a return. 18% like, I'm out already. So only a quarter of our dedicated, educated, loyal Ohio State fans are like, yeah, like I would still maybe bring him back no matter what. There are certainly other people saying this, and here's the thing, and it's fine. Like, we're here for you guys, and that's why we're here. But I'm not here for the Twitter audience, right? Like, that's no offense, but like, I'm not here for the trolls. And there's like a lot of firebombers who are just like throwing stuff, and then when anything goes wrong, they're like, see, and it's like, well, you want to fire people every day of the year for the last 2,000 days, and so then like on the lowest point, you're like, see, and it's like, I don't, and then they might not even live in America, and they're just like bombing from afar. And it's like, that guy is a truth teller. And it's like, okay, like if that's what you want, that's fine. But like, I'm not like the Twitter trolls, whatever, the firebombers. That's not who I'm here for. This group, for the people who actually care enough to consume something like this or be part of the tech. You don't have to be a tech subscriber, but if you're watching the show, that's who we care about. I think it's natty or bust. Yeah. And I've seen some other national people say the same thing, but is that where you are?
It is 100% where I am. And I'm actually, I'm a little surprised that we have so many people who aren't there. Even if it is a rather small percentage, it's even then it's a high for me. Like you said, it was
25% who are, if they at least compete in the playoff, it probably is worth bringing them back.
Yeah. I'm not saying you're wrong in that opinion or whatever. I'm just kind of surprised it's that high. I'm very much there. I think he needs to win a national championship.
Because this is the two paths conversation, which is, I'm sure people are sick of me saying by now, but like, you can't keep being 0 for 2 on the paths, which is the Michigan path and the everything else path. And that was the thing about 2 years ago. It's like, okay, you were 0 for 1 on the Michigan path, but you still got you were one of the last 4 teams, and my God, like you were right there. Right. So I think that's one of those when you say, like, if they're competitive but don't win it, it's almost like that Georgia game that you are absolutely as good as the national champion. And you have a couple things go against you. You have some injury, bad luck, right? And you miss a field goal at the end. But honestly, Ohio State probably wins that game even more than 5 out of 10 times, right? They might win that game 7 out of 10 times if Cade Stover doesn't get hurt and Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't get hurt and they're not down so many guys and they miss the field goal at the end. So, like, I'm not so married to this that if that's what it is, right, that I'd be like, nope, doesn't matter regardless. But like right now, they just aren't achieving anything they set out to do. Right. And this was different because let me ask this question also, Landis. I asked the people this, which is closest to your feeling about Ryan Day? I was pretty out on him before, and today proved I'm right. I was a defender of Day, and now I'm out. I was a defender of Day, and today was terrible, but I still believe in him to some degree. So, still in, always out, was in, now I'm out. How would you have answered?
I don't know that I fit into one of those 3 myself. I'm probably between, like, I was out to begin with, and I was like quasi in, and now I'm out. The result is that like I'm out, but I wasn't like a stringent Ryan Day defender. Like I think people who were discussing his clear flaws were making some salient points. I guess I was probably closest to like mostly in, but now I'm out.
Okay. I think I am in the epitome of I was in and now I'm out. I thought a lot of it. Michigan was good. Michigan was good. Michigan was good. I don't know what else to tell you. Ohio State didn't play its best game those last 3 years, but Michigan was good. And listen, they went down to the wire with Oregon. And like, I mean, I really, if people want to say that like I was defending him, whatever, I just thought there was a lot of reasonable, like, hey man, it's hard to win. And you know, the whole like, so they beat Notre Dame and they beat Penn State and that somehow doesn't count. And the only times that it counts are when you lose to Michigan and Georgia and Alabama. And that's the only thing you're judged on. Like, what are we doing here? Like, that's the thing. I thought this changed my mind. That I thought a lot of the things that were reasonable are now unreasonable. And it was the first time that I really thought like, oh, this is like, he doesn't coach his best in this game. And it exposes flaws overall. And listen, we have to be honest about this. Like, I think I have a relationship with Ryan Day. A lot of people on the beat do. He is a very normal, regular guy. I think he's a good person. I think he has a nice family. This is a real thing. This is big boy school. You get paid a lot of money. You signed up for this. I don't think he's performing at the level that Ohio State needs him to perform at and the level that he's being paid to perform at. And I thought that was a terrible coaching performance across the board. And so I was in and now I'm out. And that's where most fans were. 58%. Yep. I was a defender of Day and now I'm out. 32%. I was a defender. Today was terrible, but I still believe in him to some degree. 10%. I was out before and today proved I'm right. So again, like this is okay. Like this is not like for more than half of, again, what I think is a fantastic subset of people who really care about this program. For more than half of them to turn on one game, Landis, I think is a lot, and it says something, but also is not surprising at all, and also I think not unreasonable for one game to change people's minds.
No, I don't think it's unreasonable either. I want to read this text we got from Will because I would imagine it speaks for a lot of people who are in this group, and you kind of touched on it there. I think a lot of people like sort of like who Ryan Day is, like as a person, right? Because I think he is in some ways, not in some ways, I think in a lot of ways, maybe different, just sort of like personality wise from a lot of big time college football coaches. Will said, I love Ryan Day as a person. I've been rooting for this to work, but I'm done. He clearly does not know how to coach against Michigan. He has a severe inability to look at something and realize it's not working. He waits for fans and media to tell him something is not working before he makes a change. He's a horrible game manager. He's constantly outcoached by his opponent. This cannot continue. And then he listed a couple of examples throughout the game, the last of which being finding a way to put 12 guys on the field after a timeout.
Yeah. So I hope people know this by now, and this is not what it's about, but it's like there's only one person I care about in any of these discussions, and people say like, oh, they're afraid to criticize people or they don't want to lose their access. Like, we don't care about that at all. The only
It's also
person
not how it works.
It's also not how it works, but the only person I care about is you. Like you, the viewer, the fan, the listener, the person who loves this team. Like, we work for you. So that's the only thing that matters. And in service of you, if there are times, Bill, where we feel something, I feel like it's the best thing for fans for this person to remain in his job, because a lot of this, like, nobody wins every game. A lot of this is reasonable. Are you sure you're going to get somebody better? Change isn't always the right answer. I believe what we are saying, it's not to defend a person who maybe is not living up to the standard, but it's to say we still think they can, and you can't fire somebody every time they lose a game, because it's not good for the program. It's not good for the fans. So when the mind for me changes on that, it's that, okay, now we've reached a point where it has changed in my mind what would be good for the program, because I thought like that. You were more down the line with more questions about Ryan Day, as you already said, but like, I was stunned.
I mean, I was still stunned.
By the coaching performance. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I very much thought Ohio State was going to win that game. It was pretty clear, even in the course of the game, that like Michigan had to scrape its way to 13 points. I definitely thought Ohio State, even if it had a little bit of a clunky game on offense, was going to find a way to score plenty to beat that Michigan team. And like the way that the game was spoken about during the week, I think framed my view on it too. It just seemed like Ohio State was very confident going into that game, and then the game started, and it was a lot of the same. I thought, just like puzzling coaching decisions. I don't know that the defense played tight until maybe the end, but I thought like the offense was like pretty tightly wound and just kind of not in the flow of the game. And Ryan Day clearly wasn't in the flow of the game, and it was just more of the same. So, yeah, even with the questions I had, I was still quite shocked by what we saw.
Just real quick on the defense, because we talked about this to some degree on KOTN, and there was at least a couple people pushing back on it. Like, it's not to blame the defense in a game where they only give up 10 points. But first of all, the Michigan quarterback play is terrible. I thought the touchdown was there if he throws a better ball. They had like a third down on a key spot where they had a guy break open on a Davis Warren scramble who was wide open behind the defense, and Davis Warren missed him. And it was like, there were a couple times where it was not great defense necessarily. Jack Sawyer made a nice play. I think 80% of power conference quarterbacks throw that over the defensive end and get it to the wide open tight end, right? So, I mean, you can't rely on the incompetence. You knew the Michigan quarterback play was incompetent, but that can't be the reason that your defense is succeeding. But anyway, Michigan was 2 of 8 on third downs, and on its last 2 drives converted 5 straight third downs. They wound up 7 for 14 on third down. They were 2 of 8. They converted 5 straight, and then they didn't get the third down before the field goal, which they didn't try to get really. So, like, I mean, like that, like 5 straight third downs with the game on the line is in that moment. It's not that the defense lost them the game, but when the defense had a chance to stand up because everything else on the team was falling apart, the special teams fell apart, the offense fell apart, the coaching fell apart, and the defense with 2 drives had a chance to say, okay, we're going to carry you guys. They gave up 5 straight third downs. And I think that's just a fact. Like, and to be like, well, they only gave up 10. Like, that's not the conversation. And the situation that mattered, they gave up 2 drives at the end of the game against an offense that still was pretty incompetent. And I don't think it's because they were exhausted, right? Like, they couldn't get off the field. They gave up a bunch of throws. Some of it were the calls. Like, they had Lathan Ransom playing off coverage on a tight end for an easy little out route. That's like, why is that the matchup? That's how that happened on a do or die third down. They had Jermaine Matthews on a walk-on on a scramble play that the guy came back to the ball and made a diving play. And it's like, you're going to have a lacrosse player walk-on beat your guy here. And again, is it Jermaine Matthews' fault? No, but it's like, how can Ohio State give that up? I certainly think that that's part of why they lost, right? That the defense is not completely off the hook. It's not their fault, but also they had a chance to win the game for this team and they didn't.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to say you give up 13 points, you should win almost any game you're in if you're Ohio State. It's just like the way it unfolded, which was a little more of the same. If I'm ranking, everything was bad, but like if I'm or everything contributed to the loss, but if I'm ranking things that contributed to the loss the most, like I'm probably starting like Ryan Day, offense, special teams, then defense, but they all mattered. Michigan had 120 yards on its first 8 possessions and 134 yards on its final 2 possessions, and had the ball for like the entire fourth quarter. Ohio State's offense was on the field for less than 2 minutes in the fourth quarter, and part of that's on the offense because it could not get a first down in its penultimate drive, I guess, and then clearly they didn't get one, and they got to have a drive at the end. I think they gained 1 yard on that drive. So I'm not saying it's only the defense's fault that Ohio State's offense was not on the field, but that's a long time for Michigan to be on the field. There was like a 9-minute drive, and then another drive that was over 5 minutes long that started late in the third quarter. Michigan hasn't punted in the fourth quarter against Ohio State since 2019.
So it's part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Who would you rather have coaching Ohio State next season, Ryan Day or Mike Vrabel? Who do you think won?
I would say Day 1 because I don't think people believe Vrabel would take the job.
73% Mike Vrabel.
Oh,
so this is just and however you want to take it. If it's like a fanciful, whatever, if that was your reason, whatever. But like that was just the choice. Who would you rather? I didn't say in a perfect world. I just said who would you rather, and 73% said Mike Vrabel. And then the second question was, if Mike Vrabel isn't available, what should Ohio State do? These were the options. Fire Ryan Day anyway, if he doesn't win a national title, and hire an established winning coach. Fire Ryan Day anyway without a national title and hire a rising younger coach, or think hard about giving Day another season if you can't get Vrabel. So let me do it this way. Do you think hard about giving Day another season in that situation got less than 50% or more than 50%?
Less.
Barely less. 46% think hard about giving Day another season. 40% fire him, go to an established coach. 14% fire him, go to a rising young coach. So let's have a Mike Vrabel conversation. I just can't tell. I'm not there. Like, to me, the Mike Vrabel conversation is practically as obvious as the Urban Meyer conversation was during the 2011 season. Like, this is a guy with huge Ohio ties who has been a successful head coach who doesn't have a job. It's not, it's when you don't have a job, it's such a different conversation. If he was still a head coach of the NFL, and it's like, can you pry him away from an NFL team? So Mike Vrabel is the Ohio State Jim Harbaugh. He is the former player who has gone on to be a successful coach, primarily in the NFL, who now would come home to save his alma mater. Except Jim Harbaugh, had to leave something. And Mike Vrabel just floating around, helping out, teaching Browns tight ends how to block. He's like a whatever consultant to the Browns. But to me, it's like that Mike Vrabel's in the state, and everybody knows he's an Ohio native. He's in the state. It's just like when Urban was did the first game of that year as a broadcaster in 2011. It's like he's right here. He's staring you in the face. So I kind of assume that everybody, and I'm in Iowa still. I'm out here in Iowa, and I am. What did I hit? Why did something ring to me? I'm an old man. I don't understand technology. I'm in Iowa, and I'm having these conversations in the press box, and to me, it's like, well, of course, it's Vrabel, and people are like, what? Whatever. I think they could get him today. So now, and I don't mean because he doesn't have a job right now, and other NFL teams are going to want him. I think he would take it. So I don't have inside information about that now. I know when he left Ohio State to go be a defensive coordinator in the NFL, I know for a fact that I was told his goal was to be an NFL head coach or the Ohio State head coach. Those were his two goals in life. And he's been an NFL head coach, and now we have questions about the Ohio State head coaching situation. So I think if they would want to move quickly, and then we'll get into the logistics of it. But if people are saying would he take the job, I think in a vacuum, regardless of timing, interest, and especially now with the way recruiting has changed, and people always said, does he want to go out and recruit and do that stuff? And he can just sit in his office and be a closer and tell the NIL people where to direct the checks. I think he'd take it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't cover Mike Vrabel. He was gone before I started covering Ohio State. I've never talked to him. I'm not even sure I've ever been in the same room as him. So I wouldn't pretend to know one way or the other whether or not he would take it. I guess my view on the whole thing was I've always thought it was a little silly, the immediate reaction of like, he wouldn't do that, or he doesn't want to recruit to this topic. Cause I think it's a different dynamic with the recruiting. And I think actually Mike Vrabel would be a pretty good recruiter if he were a head coach, based off what I do know about him, and how much he loves Ohio State. So I would be, I guess, surprised if he didn't take it if offered. You would know better than me, or have a little better grasp on it, I think, of actually like, would he take it if offered?
So then we get into a logistics conversation of, I think he's going to have NFL opportunities. The Chicago Bears, for instance, already have an opening. There will be other places that are going to fire their head coach. I do think it's possible. I think maybe Mike Vrabel is the number one available candidate.
Belichick?
It's either Vrabel or Belichick, but Mike Vrabel is like Belichick Jr., like played for Bill Belichick and is 20 years younger and is less crotchety. So he's going to have opportunities in the NFL. And Ohio State, I just don't know how Ohio State could manage this, because like you know, they're going to be in the playoff and then they got to go play in the playoff, and you're not going to lose in the playoff on purpose. So you can be done and offer a job to somebody else sooner. But certainly, I mean, it could get a little hairy just with the timing of things if there are NFL teams who are firing head coaches. I mean, because like it's very possible that Ohio State's season ends before the NFL regular season, but there might be NFL teams with openings who are making moves on coaches before that time. So you do acknowledge there's a logistical thing here, and I just don't know what the situation would be of, hey, Mike, like, hang loose, back channel discussions. If we don't win the national title, like, we are very, 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 very interested in talking to you. I think there's probably a way to do that. But listen, there's always like logistical considerations and timing things when you get to the end of seasons like this. It wouldn't be the first time that a college program has to overcome some timing issues to get the guy they want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also don't know, like, this is me speaking as someone who just watches the NFL and I'm not an expert in it, but like, the Bears seem like they're a mess. Like, are we even sure that Mike Vrabel would jump at that job if offered, right? If the Cowboys job opens, like, you sure you want to do that? Like, I get it's the Cowboys, but like, Mike Vrabel, I think, has the leverage to like wait it out and see if like a really good NFL job might come available. But if that were the case, then that's a job that's not going to come available till after the NFL season, right? If someone decides to retire or whatever, or just move on. So maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't want to be like naive to it, but maybe that urgency is not quite as heightened as we're thinking based off the timing of some things.
Yeah.
And the quality of jobs that would be available right now.
Yeah. I do think a lot of people think like, as an NFL head coach, your number one thing is, do I have a quarterback? So it's like the Bears are a mess, but they have Caleb Williams. And it's like, okay, we have a quarterback we can build around. We're not trying to find somebody in the draft or, that's a good starting point. But agreed. I don't know that there's the perfect NFL job waiting there for him. The Ohio State job's the perfect job.
The perfect college job is, well,
there's only one of those for him.
Yeah.
I think he wouldn't go be a college head coach somewhere else. He loves Ohio State.
I don't think so.
He's a Buckeye through and through.
Yeah.
So, so I do think it's reasonable. Every hiring and firing decision, the firing decision, I think, is often related to, well, who could we hire? And I think when we got to get rid of this guy no matter what, like anything is better than this conversation. And then there's well, I'm not sure about this guy, but if we can get that guy, we definitely want to do that. But if we can't get him, then I'm not sure. I think we might be there, given how things have played out and the opportunity for Ohio State to get a Buckeye Harbaugh, prodigal son, returns to save the program. And it is the thing that it always is. It's an offensive coach to a defensive coach, and it is kind of a nice guy to a hard ass. And I'm not saying Mike Vrabel is not a nice guy, but he's like just has a tough guy persona, right? And I'm not saying, but Mike Vrabel is quite different than Ryan Day. And the other thing is, you can't only hire people from Ohio. That is a hard way to limit your pool. But man, a lot of people would like a Buckeye running this program right now. So Mike Vrabel is the opposite of Ryan Day in 3 fundamental ways that I think for a lot of people would be boxes you would want to check for the next coach. Just the same way that Urban Meyer checked. It's like, oh, Urban Meyer, is he from Ohio? Yep. Do you have any national championships? Yep. Is he available? Yep. It's like, okay, like, what are we doing? Like, anybody could have hired that guy.
Does he hate Michigan with every fiber of his being? Yeah.
And that's one of the things, too. It's like some of these guys, like Mike Vrabel is a great Buckeye. He's a Cooper Buckeye. It's not like he beat the pants off Michigan his whole life, right? But he's a great Buckeye. He hates Michigan. So I do think, do you agree that a Vrabel versus Day conversation is somewhat substantially different than a Day should be fired conversation? That when you have Vrabel as the option, it changes. You drop that fish in the aquarium, it changes the environment.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there are a lot of people feeling that too. It's interesting to me. Like, you sent out the survey, then people also responded with their thoughts on it, and there were some who were just like, "I like Day. He's my guy. Let's give him a chance." Keenan said like Day's still a great college coach. Jeff said, like, let's give Day a similar chance that Michigan gave Jim Harbaugh to figure it out. I'm still a defender of Day. But a lot of the other people who were in the camp of, like, quote unquote supporting Ryan Day were not so much supporting Ryan Day as they were expressing fear of the unknown and what happens if you get rid of him. So I think if there's a Vrabel there, maybe some of those people will be comforted by that. I'm not saying all of them, but I think probably a decent amount of them will be comforted by that. But if it's not a slam dunk that it's Vrabel, then I think that the percentage of people who would actually want Ryan Day gone probably drops a decent amount.
So part of this that is hard in a comparison to a Harbaugh situation is that when Harbaugh stayed, he changed his whole staff, right? That was kind of like the thing. They hired 7 new assistants that offseason, and that's when they got rid of Don Brown and they brought in Mike McDonald, and they hired a bunch of really important, including Sharon Moore, hired a bunch of really important new assistants that changed the fabric of that team. If Ryan Day is back, like what else could be changed? Because as we already discussed, and as everybody watching and listening to this knows, they already did change a lot. Like, honestly, what else is there to change other than the head coach to try to get this right for Ohio State?
Offensive line coach. I guess like tight ends coach if you wanted to, because you have Keenan Bailey like learning on the job, which I think you and I are in agreement that that's not what Ohio State is for. I don't know. Aside from that, I'm not sure what else you changed. McMurati, maybe. Probably.
Yeah. I mean, the hard thing is that it's one of those things. It's very hard when it's like you think one thing for 11 weeks. It's like, oh, this is good enough. This is good enough. And then they play one game. It's like, that was never good enough. And it's like, I don't know. Is that good analysis? Kyle McCord and Will Howard the last 2 years are not the ideal of the Ohio State quarterback, right? Even though we felt like Will Howard was an upgrade over Kyle McCord, Will Howard made humongous mistakes in the Michigan game that helped cost Ohio State the game. And you would hope and expect that Ohio State has a quarterback that in the Michigan game is making plays to win that game, not plays to help them lose that game. So is handing the program over, not handing the program, but is having 5-star Julian Sayin waiting, ready to maybe be a guy who would be more back in line with the Haskins, Fields, Stroud line of Ohio State quarterbacks? Like, is that enough? Like that, like what's the change? That's the change. Is that enough? That like, because right? Is there any doubt about who's the quarterback next year? If Ryan Day is the head coach next year, who's the starting quarterback? There's no doubt about it, right?
Julian Sayin, yeah.
Okay. And is that good? Is that good enough? Is that exciting? Is that like, okay, Now, like that's something that's different enough that is not just something for fans to like emotionally hold on to, but also maybe a fundamental change to the program. Like, no, we're going to be better at the most important spot on the field.
Yeah, a little bit, I think. I don't think it's the cure all for people's concerns, but it would definitely help. I don't know that it would help to the extent of people feeling just like a total rejuvenation of confidence in the program moving forward, because I think that there are too many other things to address besides quarterback.
Can I ask an indelicate question, which is
Mhm.
not personal? It's not personal. It's results based. It's results based. And nobody cares more than the players and coaches, right? We get that.
Yeah.
Like this group, the group that stayed, never got it done. And
Yeah.
this is going to be an absolute turnover of the roster.
Yep.
Maybe for good, like completely refreshed. That like there have been a lot of guys who have been the driving force of this program. And unfortunately for them, at the moment, their legacy is they were 0-4 against Michigan. That is a very, very difficult thing. They also have been incredibly, incredibly successful in almost all their other games. We get that. It doesn't mean that they're losers or anything, right? It's just stating facts. But
Mhm.
what we're talking about on this Sunday is that Ohio State can't beat Michigan. And you turn it over to a bunch of other guys. And it's one of those things that is just showing up. We've been saying it all year, but on a day like this, it feels different to me. They brought all these guys back, and their two best players have been a true freshman and a sophomore transfer. That there's something to that to me a little bit that shows up more a little bit today when you had Denzel Burke get like a pass interference penalty that was like, how can you get that in that spot? And when you have a couple guys, not to blame guys, but it's Kalel Mullings runs into a wall and there are tackles to be made at the point of attack and he bounces outside for a 20-yard gain on a killer third down late in the game, right? And when you have like maybe just, which is why I do think like preseason natty or bust, I disagree with, because like what's the bust? Because to me, natty or bust is like, if you don't win now, you're never going to win. And it's like, okay, well, you're coming back next year with Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, get in the portal for some offensive line help. And then let's see what like the Edric Houston, Calvin Simpson, Hunt, Jalen McClain, you know what I mean? Like that, show me that team. Because we know what this team looks like. We've seen a lot of these guys for a long time. And again, in a certain way, very, very successful. They never beat Michigan. So I don't know, like if you could say right now to the Ohio State program, the Ohio State fans, do you want, hey, this whole team, it turns out they're giving them all a COVID year, an extra year late, and they all want to come back. I think you'd say thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, I think it's just time to move on, right?
Like, is that
So,
something?
yeah, I mean, I think so. You go from incredibly experienced to not that, like, very quickly. So that's a thing. Like, I think the experience matters, although didn't matter enough to get Ohio State to win against Michigan. So, yeah, I think there's something to that. We're talking about some pretty talented players when we're having this conversation, so I don't want to be dismissive of that. But new energy is
Agree.
new energy, and if it's
Yes.
not gonna come via a head coaching change, then I guess like a roster turnover is a way to foster some of that too. I think it concerns people. I think all year, like I've seen stuff from people like, man, this roster is really going to change after this year. They got to get it done because like it could be a bit of a, I don't know if step back's the right word because Ohio State hasn't really had any of those, but certainly a rebuild. It's not like you're gearing up for natty or bust with the roster next year as we expect it to be. So, I think people are made a little nervous by that, but I think to your point, I think it could be just a good thing to cycle in some new vibes with guys who be playing the most.
Yeah. Show me what the Arvell Reese, Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, James Peoples, Jelani Thurman, Brandon Innes, Ohio State team led by Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith. I'd kind of like to see what that would look like. And if we're talking about, so for all the things we just said, like talent matters, experience matters. I think energy right now for this program might be the thing that matters the most. They need new energy, and they're gonna get it. So the thing is, and this is not, and you are exactly correct. We do not want to be dismissive of the blood, sweat, and tears that these very talented football players put into this program. And I don't think we are being that, but we're just going by results here. I remember like a head coach saying this, like we always look in the preseason at like returning production is like the number one thing you look at when you're trying to figure out how good a team can be. And somebody was like, well, yeah, you might have a lot of guys back, but like, are they good? Did you want them back? Like back doesn't necessarily mean better. And I think when it comes to this game, you know, it's just very unfortunate. But they ended up, it's like a lot of guys who were carrying we never got it done. And to come back next year, I don't think James Peoples is going to be like, oh, we never got it done, right? Arvell Reese is not going to be like, oh, we never got it done. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, it's our time now. And even like Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson are going to be in their 4th years. They've never got to have an impact on this game. Give me Kenyatta Jackson with 50 snaps in a Michigan game that he's been bottling up for 4 years, waiting for this chance. I don't know. Compared to what it's been, I think I'd take that. Let's see what that looks like. And maybe my point is like, maybe that's enough, that the energy must change. The energy must change. But maybe the roster turnover will provide that in a way that it doesn't have to be a coaching change.
I didn't realize this. Kenyatta Jackson played 7 snaps and Caden Curry played 3.
They didn't play anybody. They didn't play anybody on offense, and they didn't play anybody on defense. The only thing they did on defense was switch Jordan Hancock and Arvell Reese out, and they played Jermaine Matthews a little bit for Denzel Burke. Otherwise, nobody else played. And on offense, they didn't do any packages. Like Brandon Ennis played like 2 snaps. They didn't do anything. Now, that's part of it too. The halfback pass, once again, they didn't do anything. Did they run a single play? Like the best thing they ran that was like, oh, a little wrinkle here was like the roll right, throwback left to G. Scott, tight end throwback that had 3 defenders on top of G. Scott, was dead from the moment they called it. They didn't have anything creative. Again, no search for the margins. No search for the margins. They didn't do squat. That they didn't. They lean into what they think they are in that game in a way. They didn't do anything. No different packages. The whole thing where they would put all the receivers, the backup receivers in, and just have teams be like, why are Brandon Ennis and Bryson Rodgers in and Jeremiah Smith's waving at our defensive backs from the sideline? Oh my God, we just got burned for 25 yards. Didn't do that. They did nothing. They did nothing.
They ran one play. They ran one play of unbalanced with 2 tackles on the same side of the line. I think they gained a yard.
Can you believe it? They did nothing. They did.
Can I believe it? Yeah, because that's not new. That's like new player energy is great. Same staff. Like it's going to be largely the same staff. Like because if Ryan Day cleans house again, then just get rid of them. Like how many times do you need to reshape your entire coaching staff?
No, this is not a fire Jim Knowles, fire Justin Fry, fire Keenan Bailey, fire Matt Guerreri. And now we got it right. It's not that. No.
Yeah. You don't get to do that many times.
No, it's either everybody's like maybe one guy, but like it's either everybody's back or nobody's back. Right. I mean, which is the thing again, which is different than Harbaugh. They already did the reset. The reset was after last year. Like they wish they had a Parker Fleming and Corey Dennis for me to be yelling about right now.
Someone,
man.
Yeah.
Is there someone else we can blame?
I think you're looking new offensive line coach, and if Larry Johnson decides to retire, defensive line coach. But other than that, I don't know what else you do.
Yeah. All right. So if it's not Mike Vrabel, then let's play this game, and we'll stop right. So when you look at, okay, do you want to play this like super quick? I think this is a reasonable way to do it. Okay, it's like, is Ohio State going to hire the I was going to say the Tulsa head coach as an example, but Kevin Wilson was the Tulsa head coach. So it's like, no. I mean, let's say they hired the Florida Atlantic head coach. Oh, wait, that was Tom Herman. He got fired. Let's say they hired the Temple head coach. Oh, wait, that was Stan Drayton. He got fired. Like the list of, this is the thing again, like this. There was a thing a year ago that I wrote, or a couple years ago, that it was like, there were like 7 former Browns quarterbacks who were backup quarterbacks on other NFL teams. It was like, why the Browns are horrible, but why are there former Browns quarterbacks on like 38% of NFL rosters? And this could be an offseason where it's like 9 different former Ohio State coaches were fired this offseason. Let's play this game. Ready? Bottom up from the last college football playoff rankings, should Ohio State try to steal their head coach if Mike Vrabel's not available and they want to make a change? Do you want to play this game?
Let's do it.
Number 25, Colorado. Do you want Deion Sanders in Columbus?
You wanted to do this quick?
We're stop there.
You wanted to do this quick? No, I don't think so.
It's one of those, like, if he was bringing his kid and Travis Hunter, it's like, I mean, I don't know. He's recruiting. Guys play, like, talk about energy. Like, there's a lot of good stuff. This is not going to turn into this. There's a lot of good stuff happening in Colorado. Like, energy in the program. I'm not saying, but like energy in the program compared to the energy at Ohio State right now. I'm just saying. Yeah. Okay. Kansas State, Chris Kleiman.
No.
Illinois, Brett Bielema.
No.
UNLV, Barry Odom.
No.
Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz.
No.
Definitely no.
No. He's like Ryan Day, but more annoying.
Yeah, and he also won 8-3 at Missouri. Mike Elko, Texas A&M.
Maybe.
Kalani Sitake, BYU.
No.
He wouldn't leave. That's a heck of a guy, though.
Yeah.
Matt Campbell, Iowa State.
No.
Definitely no.
I think he's just fine where he is.
He's not.
We've had that conversation.
I mean, that's a long conversation.
Yeah.
We've been there.
Yeah. I mean, he's from Ohio.
Who's the Tulane head coach? This is my failing. They're in
John
the South
Sumrall, who
blew the North Carolina job.
He's a really good coach. No, only because I don't know that like rising G5 coach is the right play for Ohio State, but I do think he's a pretty good coach. I think of all the people you're going to list, John Sumrall might be like a top 5 football coach.
Kenny Dillingham, Arizona State. He's 26 years old. I don't think he's not allowed to run a car on his own, but
yeah,
he's done a good job. Shane Beamer, South Carolina.
No.
Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss.
No.
Kalen DeBoer, Alabama.
Maybe.
Dabo
Do I have
Swinney.
to say yes? Can I say maybe?
You can say maybe. Dabo Swinney.
Dabo. No.
Who's the Boise State guy? Is it Spencer Danielson? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. No. You thinking about it?
No. About the Boise think about the next one. Kurt Signetti, Indiana.
Oh boy.
Tear up the contract. Tear up the contract.
No, that's complicated.
It's not the conversation to have right now. Yeah. Rhett Lashley, SMU.
I think he's a Ryan Day type individual. Like, do you want rising offensive mind? Do you want to do that again?
Yeah. Josh Heupel, Tennessee.
No.
Kirby Smart, Georgia.
Yes. Of course.
We need more shoving in this program. Mario Cristobal, Miami.
No.
Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame. Let's put a pin in that. James Franklin, Penn State. No. Steve Sarkisian, Texas.
Yeah. I think I might say yes to that.
And then Dan Lanning, Oregon.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think there would, like, of the current top 25, I think there would be two names that would actually get people, like, fans excited and be reasonably, like, things that be excited for the program. And they're Marcus Freeman and Dan Lanning. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that?
I don't know how people feel about Marcus.
Yep.
Because really, he said some things about Ohio State that have been odd, right? Like that I understandably have rubbed people the wrong way. And the losses that he's had are really head scratching, but also kind of feels like maybe he's getting ready to turn a corner. So I don't know. I think he is a polarizing figure in this conversation.
I don't think he would leave at the moment. I mean, like, he's got too much invested in Notre Dame. He's a young head coach. I don't think it would go. So then it's like becomes one of these things when you think about, like, the current landscape of college football. if it's not Vrabel, I don't know who is like an obvious realistic candidate unless you throw $12 million at Dan Lanning, which is stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
And Ohio State just took Oregon's running backs coach. Like Ohio State's a better job than Oregon. And Dan
But is
Lanning,
it the best job in college football?
I mean, this is
it
one of
not?
those, like, it's a constant conversation, but you have every resource, you have a fertile recruiting ground, you have a history, you have an incredible support, both financially and just from fans who love the team, but you also don't have to go live in an SEC crockpot and have as many. I mean, people scream at you at Ohio State, but not as much as they scream at you in the SEC. So I do think it is the best job in college football. And so I think Lanning is one of those where, and again, he lost to his rival twice last year, but they beat the pants off Washington on Saturday. I don't think that's like why don't we see if we can, like, whatever, bring Vince Lombardi back? Like, I actually think like you could make a call to Dan Lanning and have a meeting. And I don't think he'd be like, get bent, I'm not going to Ohio State.
I don't think so. Because I think he probably would have taken the Alabama job if he didn't have the foresight of knowing he probably shouldn't be the guy to replace Nick Saban. And Oregon's a really good job with incredible resources itself, but Ohio State's a better job. And I guess I don't know, like, would Ohio State win a bidding war with Phil Knight? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe not.
And like, he's not of the South, right? I mean, he was Georgia's defensive coordinator.
He's all
he
over the
worked
place.
at Alabama, but he's all over the place.
Yeah.
He's like from Missouri.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he's like some Southern guy who wouldn't be a cultural fit at
He's
Ohio
a citizen of
State.
the world. Yeah.
But I do think, like, once you get past Vrabel, it's not quite as obvious, right? And so then I think it does change the conversation a little bit, right? So I think it's like, if you think you can get Vrabel and Ryan Day doesn't win the national championship, I think if you can make a coaching change knowing that you have your coach before you make the decision.
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
Glenn Schumann.
See, so like, that's who's the current defensive coordinator at Georgia. Like, is that an assistant with no ties? Like, have they ever done that? They've never
Ryan
done
Day.
that. But he's in the building. Like, it's just like, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Because there's a thing of, like,
not since Woody. Yeah.
But Woody was a head coach at Miami. Like, Woody been a head
coach.
No,
I mean like before.
Oh,
before that. Yeah.
But like back when it was like, if we're going to hire the head coach, we're hiring a new gym professor. And by the way, you got to coach a football team.
You got to coach a football team. Yeah.
But to hire somebody with like no ties to the university and who's never been a head coach, I think that is very fraught. Like, that to me does not.
But he's Lanning. He's Lanning, right? Or the people. That's what people think he is.
So I think Oregon can test that. Can Ohio State test that out? Like, is that how big of a risk do you think that is?
I mean, it's no more of a risk than promoting Ryan Day.
Oh, I think it's more of a risk because you felt like you knew Ryan Day. Like, Ryan Day had never been a head coach, but you felt like you knew the guy in the building. I think that's substantially different. That this is, you're 0 for 2 on Glenn Schumann. We don't know what he's like as a head coach, and we don't know anything about him. And I usually think a place like Ohio State should be 1 for 2. Now, Oregon didn't know Dan Lanning, right? Mm-hmm. So if that's your thing, like, well, Oregon did it, and it turned out awesome, so Ohio State should do it. Okay, that's certainly a reasonable argument. It is not typically, I think, how like the elite of the elite operate, right?
I mean, that's how Georgia got Kirby.
But Kirby played at Georgia. They knew Kirby. Yeah. Like, Kirby's Vrabel. Like, Kirby's a homegrown guy. Like, this is Glenn Schumann probably has never been in the city of Columbus before, and he's never been a head coach. That is a real swing. But are you at a point where Ohio State,
that's actually a good conversation, yeah,
like, is it worth the swing? Because this is one of these things too. Like, I think so. It's like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Actually, so the worst thing that could happen is like, he's fine. Any head coach, the worst thing that could happen is like, you're fine but not good enough, and now you waste a decade, right? Which is actually like where their head may be headed with the Ryan Day thing. Like, he's good, but he's not good enough, and now it's 6 years in. Because of what the worst is like, Glenn Schumann comes and is overmatched And turns out he was propped up by Kirby Smart, and he doesn't know squat about the Midwest, and
Sure.
you fire him in 3 years, and you reset, and you just move on.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's all well said. I think you're right. It's more risky. I guess I that's the other profile though, right? Is the hot commodity coordinator who's looking for his first shot. Like it's like Brett Venables, right? But even Venables had been at Oklahoma before.
Right. And is like kind of not working.
It was also not working. That's an interesting spinoff. Is like, what's the best example of what's the most successful unfamiliar rising star coordinator turned head coach?
And it's Dan Lanning.
And I guess it's Dan Lanning.
And
but
here's the thing
for
that
every Dan Lanning, how many Brett Venables are there?
And I think this has been proven over time. And I think plenty of people have written and said this is like, it turns out there's not a profile. Everything's individual. It's all the person and the circumstance. And the idea of like, you could look at Curt Cignetti and say, Curt Cignetti and Jim Tressel, hire a lower level national championship, hugely winning coach who is jumping up a level. That's the way to go. Okay, but we can show, so you can say Curt Cignetti, Lance Leipold, Jim Tressel, but then you can find people where that didn't work. Go get somebody from the NFL. Go get there's not a surefire profile. So it's all about identifying the right person and putting them in the position to succeed. And then what really matters is what kind of dude is Ross Bjork in terms of making this hire, and what kind of dude is Ted Carter. And Ted Carter, as the president of Ohio State University, didn't hire the AD that a lot of other people thought was going to be hired, and did not hire the guy with ties, and did not hire the obvious Buckeye, and went and just got a dude with no connection to the university at all, who had just been at a high level place. So now Ross Bjork had been an AD.
Who has a interesting background in football hires.
Yep.
To say the least. Right. So,
but if you look, if you look at the Ross Bjork hire and what that tells you about Ted Carter, and then maybe what that tells you about Ross Bjork, if like, okay, I think that might lead you to somebody like Dan Lanning. It's like, who'd you get? We got a guy. We don't care if he's from Ohio or not, but we got a guy who's done it at a high level at a big time place. But the point is, if it's not Dan Lanning, then maybe there aren't as many obvious, maybe it's Steve Sarkisian, right? Maybe, but there's not as many super obvious people. Cause even it's look at the Florida schools, right? The Florida schools, if they were doing anything right now, would be super interesting. But Mike Norvell, Mario Cristobal, and Billy Napier, you wouldn't touch those guys with a 10-foot pole, right? So what is, and then again, is it are Mike Elko or Shane Beamer or some of the guys who are winning in the SEC, but you wouldn't you're not going to bring Brian Kelly in. It's actually and again, I don't think Lane Kiffin is the answer. There's not as many obvious candidates of really successful high level coach that you could take from another program beyond Lanning. So
Ross Bjork wanted to hire Mark Stoops. No thanks, by the way.
Yeah, but again, and then that threads a lot of needles, right? Ohio guy, SEC head coach who's had a really is coaching a borderline playoff team this year with the way the SEC talks about Kentucky. I mean, I know they're 3-9, but I mean, they beat Ole Miss and they only lost to Georgia by a point. And then you know how it is in the SEC. I mean, it's just so hard down there. I don't think Kentucky's actually 3-9, but actually also they're not going to a bowl, right? They have a losing record?
No, and I think
what are they?
I think people would like Mark Stoops to be 4-8.
4-8
to leave so they can hire John Summerall.
Oh yeah. So
or get fired.
Yeah.
Is there anything, if we're in the world where Ohio State is making a change at football coach, is there anything instructive about Ross Bjork hiring Jake Diebler?
But who
just in the sense of he made the easy, obvious decision. He didn't pound the pavement to go find a basketball coach.
Right. I don't know. I found that whole thing kind of odd, and it might work, but I was to me, that was anti Ross Bjork. Right. So, like, but there's nobody on staff either. That's the thing, right? I guess we haven't talked about that. Do you think there would be a groundswell for fans from that perspective? That doesn't feel like it to me, but what do I know?
I haven't sensed it. I mean, I think there's a tremendous appetite for a Buckeye to be running the program.
Yeah.
So if people felt like that was like a change was imminent, then maybe there'd be more Heartline chatter. But I haven't heard really much of any of that.
Man, that's super interesting because it's like you could start doing some stuff. What if you hired Brian Hartline as your head coach and he hired Jim Tressel to be the special teams coach? And you have a guy in the building to help a guy who's never done it before, right?
Yeah.
You want to start building a Brian Hartline staff right now? Is that where we are? Building Hartline staff.
The all Buckeye staff.
Yeah.
Defensive coordinator James Laurinaitis.
Yeah. Oh my God. Now people are driving off the road. You are giving them. Oh my God. All right. I guess it's Hartline. All right. Bill Landis solved it. We've just figured it out. And then, maybe you could get Fickle and Freeman to give up their head coaching jobs to come back and just be part of the defensive staff, work under James. No, but I mean, but now I'm being stupid, but it's like Brian Hartline as a head coach with Jim Tressel, James Laurinaitis. How about bring back Tom Herman before Wisconsin hires him to be the OC? Tom Herman was a pretty good offensive coordinator here, right?
We need an adult. We need an adult in the room. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a winning combination.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything left to say that we haven't said that people want to say? I know we didn't. You went through the texture stuff. I don't want to miss the stuff that you grabbed.
Yeah, no, I think there was there's a lot of like I don't like I'll just read some of them. Kurt is like concerned, like if he do anything with Ryan Day, he's concerned about the recruits. Day is a Michigan problem when he wins 85% of his other games. He's a top of the line recruiter. He sends players to the NFL. Signing day is Wednesday. After hearing all this fired Day stuff, he didn't say stuff. How many decommits are you expecting? I think it's even more of a time to have his back is where Kurt's at. Scott said anyone who's out on Ryan Day wants to turn the Buckeyes into the Browns. Change every few years like Michigan during Rich Rod and Brady Hoke years, like Alabama is now. Ask those fans how they feel about it. 3 losses to some garbage teams. Buckeye fans are going to feel real stupid next year if we have losses to unranked Big Ten teams and don't make the playoff. Doug said, we're bad one hire away from Rich Rod, Jimbo, or Charlie Weiss situation. But by all means, fire the guy that will be in his 4th playoff and will make it every year. And he said, we're a spoiled fan base. Yeah. That there was some of that, which again is like not, I don't view that as support of Day. I view that as fear of what if you get it wrong.
Yeah. No, I would have supported a lot of that in the past. Like 6 years is not knee jerk, right? 6 years is a long time. Yeah. He's coming up. He's only 1 year fewer than Urban. Like 6 years is a long time. And like, this is like 4 in a row. And like that performance, when it should have been ascending, is instead the bottom. And this has been the program that has not made the fall off a cliff higher. And so to me, I can understand when like 2nd tier programs have that fear, right? I think a lot of the stuff like Iowa, it's like, if we get rid of Kirk Ferentz, look what happened at Nebraska. Like, we don't want that to happen to us. I don't think there's a reason for Ohio State to live in fear of this, because you should be able to get somebody great at this. And
I agree.
And honestly, like, again, the profile of Ryan Day coming in, as much as I was saying like, well, it'd be different because at least he was here. He'd never be coached a middle school team. He'd never been a head coach. So the idea that like, oh, if we get rid of Ryan Day,
journeyman assistant coach, like who bounced around to 5 different places in 10 years,
that like you can't get somebody as good as Ryan Day is like, why would you think that? And then again, this is not to say that like Ryan Day's terrible at this. He's not good in the Michigan game. We understand all the other stuff. There's a lot of very good things happening in the program. But the idea that like Ryan Day, given what has happened, is like oh man, we got to be careful because yeah, no, absolutely. You can get a guy. The guy that if Ryan Day's not the head coach, I guarantee the guy they hire next will have a better track record coming in than Ryan Day did because of what you just said. So, and even if they hire somebody on the staff, it's like, well, Brian Hartline played at Ohio State. So, like, that's different. Like, there's not a Ryan, like, there's no comparison. There's no, like, that would be odd. Like, if you think he's the right guy, okay. And that for all the reasons to still maybe think he's the right guy. To be afraid of a change, I think would be, is not how Ohio State would think, but I don't think that's how fans should think. I don't think this is something to be afraid of. Ohio State's the best job in college football, and there's plenty of people who would want to take it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I am. Who would you hire is not a relevant conversation in my mind. Who would you would go hire the best person for the job? That's who you would hire.
Yeah.
You're Ohio State.
Yeah. And right. And last time the best person for the job was a guy who had never been a head coach and had no ties to Ohio, but who was on the staff. And I'm not saying it was the wrong hire, but I'm just saying, like, what? Well, that's, the initial profile. Can you, like, if you got Steve Sarkisian or Dan Lanning or like somebody coming off of, like, anyway. So we're not trying to be dismissive. This is a results-based business for everybody involved. And so we're trying to analyze it through that lens. And I think for the two of us, the result of Saturday changed our thinking. So that's just how this business works.
It definitely did. Like, and I'm not, if you're still a Ryan Day person who thinks he's the right guy for the job, and that's great. I'm not going to try to knock you off that stance. I think you and I are just saying, like, I'm not there. I'm not there anymore. I mean, maybe he'll win a national title and he'll stick around. Or maybe he'll win a national title and decide to go try to coach somewhere else. I have no idea. But I think we are firmly in the territory of this is not good enough. And if they don't win a national title, then I think something needs to change.
And to act like people don't change their mind based on results, like everybody does. So it's like, oh, what if he wins the national? It's like, okay, well then I'll change my mind. I don't know. Like if they come out and play like gangbusters and look the best they've ever looked and roll through the playoff, I'll change my mind. But like right now, based off the results of this season and the results of this rivalry, my mind has been changed the other way. So that's how everybody does it. Like whatever you think personally of Ryan Day. And again, I think a lot of fans, a lot of media think very highly of him personally. But if you thought he was the best guy in the world and he was 3-9, there wouldn't be a conversation. Nobody would be having but he's a great guy conversation. So he's much, much, much better than 3-9, but results matter. And we all understand that. Okay. I'm getting kicked out. I had to snap my fingers because I thought I asked for a late checkout, but maybe I didn't. So it's the price of doing business. All right. I got to drive back from Iowa. So first Ohio State Michigan game I ever missed in covering this team.
Ralph Russo was there and he said it was weird to be at an Ohio State Michigan game that you weren't at.
Yeah. Everyone since 2005. So, but I got to see some good football this weekend as well. And also, I mean, like if I knew Ohio State was going to lose, maybe I was like, I'll go to Iowa. 3 touchdown favorites because they're even going to be interesting. It's like, okay. I was in my pajamas in my in-laws' house for the first half, and watching Ohio State Michigan in my pajamas was not an experience. So I showered at halftime because I had been in Iowa City. I got home from Iowa City at like 3:00 in the morning the night before. So anyway, maybe it's my fault. I accept it. Results matter. All right. He's Bill Landis. Thanks to you guys for being here. They have a shot, and we'll be talking about that later. I think we're talking about what we're going to do like on Wednesday, Landis. I think like what the Michigan game has to do with their national title chances, I think is an interesting conversation, and we can break down from a football standpoint. Can Ohio State still reasonably compete for a national title? Right? I think that's probably worth doing. We want to move with the audience. We don't want to force you somewhere you don't want to go. We don't want to drag you somewhere. Maybe we want to lead you a little bit. And I think maybe by Wednesday, it'll be like, maybe start looking forward a little bit, possibly, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's some stuff to figure out with the playoff path here. Like, I didn't see a lot of it, but I saw enough of like, oh, this knocked Ohio State out of the playoffs. Like, no, it did not. So there's a conversation about home game or not, I think. But there's not any conversation about whether or not they're in the playoff.
Yeah. And it's not what you would want, but it's just, there's a chance they get like a banger SEC matchup in Ohio Stadium out of this. So it was like,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be a heck of a crazy thing. 11 teams are in. People, I think, know this by now. We're not saying anything that a million other people aren't saying, but Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, that's 7. Notre Dame is 8. The ACC champ is 9. The Big 12 champ is 10. The group of 5 team is 11. They're all in. It's set. Like everybody knows that. And then the last spot is down to a 3-loss SEC team or a second ACC team. It has nothing to do with what's happening up in Big 10 territory. But yeah, it's set.
Yeah.
The lowest Ohio State would be as a 9, but I really think they're going to host. I would guess that they will be the 7 or the 8. Is that your guess?
My guess is that it's either Ohio State at Tennessee or Tennessee at Ohio State.
In the 8-9?
8-9 spot. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess I shouldn't say that because I think Oregon's going to beat Penn State. So maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe not. I think Ohio State could be the 7 if Oregon beats Penn State.
Because again, in that scenario, if Oregon beats Penn State, then it's who would be ahead of Ohio State? Notre Dame and the SEC championship game loser.
Yeah.
Would probably both be ahead of Ohio State. So those would be the 5 and the 6 spots being taken up. And then it's a matter of who would be the 7, a Penn State team that lost in the Big Ten title game, or would it be Ohio State because it has a head-to-head over Penn State and also lost to Oregon, which would be the team that Penn State just lost to? And did Penn State play Oregon as tough as Ohio State did? That's how you can get to Ohio State as the 7. So the other thing about it that I think is interesting then too is, and I think people are saying this is like, I don't think the group of 5 team is going to be the 4 seed, but actually the group of 5 team, if Boise State's the group of 5 team, they're not going to be the 12.
Yeah.
So like if Ohio State's the 7, I think it could be Boise State as the 10. I think it's very possible because I think Boise would have a very good chance to be ahead of Indiana and the last team that gets in. So I think an 8-9 versus those are our 2 predictions. An 8-9 versus Tennessee in Columbus or Knoxville, or a 7 versus Boise State, I think are the 2 most likely paths for Ohio State right now.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Because Boise's ahead of Arizona State and Iowa State already. Right?
But I think the winner of that will be propelled by winning a ranked game while Boise State's beating UNLV. Yeah.
What if they put UNLV in the top 25?
I don't know. I mean, that's not the conversation to have here. But anyway.
Yeah.
So, or it could be, so then you can do, but I do think I would think it's very possible that Indiana's sitting at home. I think the 12 seed is going to be that, obviously, that SEC team or ACC team. I think is the 12. And I think Indiana is the 11. And then I think the 10 is the group is either Boise State or the Big 12 champ. And if Ohio State's the 7, that's the 10 who would be coming to Columbus. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the 10 could be Indiana.
But like Indiana, but Boise, well, it's one of those. Yeah. They have said, the committee always says they give a lot of credit to winning conference championship games. That's the thing. That always happens. So like Indiana's sitting at home. I think Indiana is going to get passed by the Big 12 champ because it's a ranked game and they earn that spot. And Indiana's the 4th best team in their conference. And I just think that would happen. But anyway, so
yeah.
And I don't want that. Of all the things I don't want, Indiana in the shoe again is like the least attractive thing of all those. Now, for Ohio State fans, maybe like, all right, well, they're going to win that game. Great. Give Ohio State an easy path to go then take on the number 2 seed SEC champ. I don't care who Ohio State beats. Okay, I would listen to that too, but it wouldn't be like as exciting. So anyway. All right. That's it. Thanks to you guys for being part of it with us on this Sunday Sound Off. We appreciate you hanging with us all season, and there is a playoff ahead. So this is very difficult, not a fun time to be an Ohio State fan. We understand that. A lot of hard conversations, but there is opportunity still around the corner, and that's the way this new college football world works. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Sunday Sound Off on Kings of Columbus.